F-bombs are not armed and will not be dropped. 9017, what is it? A series of closely coordinated mass shootings targeting large gatherings with limited security. Situations like the Pulse nightclub shooting of 2016. Two-man teams, one a driver and one a shooter, arrive at the target site. Shooter exits the vehicle, opens fire, and then they take off to the next site. The team repeats as many times as possible before either running out of bullets or physically stopped by police. Allied forces close freeways, preventing the flow of delivery trucks to markets. Trucks that attempt to run these closures will be stopped by whatever means presents, and whatever cargoes they have, if useful or valuable, will be looted or otherwise simply destroyed as best possible in the few minutes available. Precedents. The February 1997 North Hollywood shootout demonstrated the power that movement gave to shooters. Had the driver not taken off on the shooter, they might well have escaped for a while anyways. The 2013 Christopher Dorner case reaffirmed the power of mobility. The fact of the matter is, had Dorner not gotten an extraordinarily unlucky break, his campaign might have lasted much longer. The 2015 San Bernardino Inland Regional Center shooting. The shooters used much this exact plan. The partner exited the vehicle to open fire as well, leaving the vehicle vulnerable to loss and therefore the shooter vulnerable to capture and counterfire, a semantic detail in this case. And we're planning a second shooting. Bombings. To distract police and firefighters responding to the shootings, to destroy abandoned vehicles, and to potentially kill other people, most likely incidental to the bombing itself. Simply load the vehicle full of explosives. Suspect profile. When I first conceived this notion back in 2014, my focus was this growing terrorist organization in Iraq, a formerly small group called ISIS. I'd heard of them as much as a year earlier, but in the cacophony of the vying bands, it was easy to lose track of any particular one. Flash forward to 2017. ISIS is on the ropes, but a new power is rising in the US. Black bloc groups calling themselves anti-fascists beating people in the streets for refusing to accept their dictatorship. By at least 2017, Antifa members had met with ISIS to plan rebellion in the US. One such group claims, with rather ambiguous evidence, to have directly joined the revolution in Rojava, meaning ISIS. Since then, Antifa has gained increased sophistication in capabilities, organization, and equipment. One branch, the John Brown Club, has made a point of it to demonstrate with guns openly displayed, including AK-47s, which at least one member admitted in Discord was selected for its ease of conversion to automatic only and bullet spread due to the overly flexible nature of the lower receiver. They had even demonstrated the ability to home-build firearms, as demonstrated by the Northwest Detention Center attacker's shitpost he called a manifesto. Antifa is stepping into the role ISIS would have filled. But they're starting to get much further ahead in that capability that they're starting to get much further ahead in capability than I could have ever conceived, even as late as 2016. Coordination. Coordinating the attacks will probably be either via Twitter or a combination of Twitter and Telegram. Types and acquisition of weapons. Types of weapons most likely seen will be common civilian-grade detachable box magazine-fed rifles, possibly converted to automatic fire only. This is fairly easily done for many types of rifles. It's also generally illegal. Sadly, this is all too easy, especially in gun-controlled countries. the UK, Australia, etc. Home-built guns are totally untraceable, and there is a thriving black market in the UK and Australia for home builds that are of a quality superior to military specification. Brazil has a robust underground gun market with quality sufficient that a batch confiscated after a raid were issued to their national police as off-duty and backup guns. Reports vary, but with some claiming said guns were converted to semi-auto only, while others claim they were not. Additionally, lever-action box magazine-fed rifles, while fairly uncommon, are a potential option due to their relative ease of production from base materials, as are pump-action only long guns, shotgun and otherwise, though these will probably be seen less due to the scatter pattern of shotguns versus the probability of kill. Remember, a wounded victim will survive, and though their statement will inspire that much more terror for the difference, they will survive. Bomb-making materials can be acquired via grocery stores if you know how to mix and boil the chemicals, but generally easier via hardware stores. It is imperative to note that the classic pipe bomb body is not required at all. Depending upon the purpose of the bomb, a classic pipe bomb is actually counterproductive. Another type of weapon that we will see are smoke grenades, both to cover the shooter's retreat and to inspire increased fear by appearing to be gas grenades. By simply wearing what looks like a gas mask, the shooter will instantly cause the crowds to believe there is, in fact, gas present. Target profiles. Places that will be targeted will simply be based on potential body counts. Bars, crowded restaurants, busy stores, etc. Ease of street access will be a significantly considered secondary importance. If it's simply too hard to get back to the street from that location, they'll bypass it. But if they can turn into the street, even right-hand only turn, they'll consider it. Coronavirus and possible successors. The global effect of COVID cannot be overstated, but the utility can be. Corona only worked for more useful in stalling response. Corona only worked insofar as it created global panic and fear, and more importantly, forced major slowdowns in productivity. A second such virus might be useful in slowing response in following days, but on the day of the bombs will be proved to be far more useful in stalling immediate response. Preparing. Get a gun. Armor of at least class 2. A food stock of at least good enough for 1 week per person in your family. Sleeping bags, one for each child and one for every 2 adults in your family or party, and water bottles. Keep at least 10 gallons of spare fuel for your primary evacuation vehicle. If possible, find a friendly voice outside your city to evacuate to. When to evacuate and where to go. You will hear at least one supposed police brutality case, reality be damned, by August. If it's within 60 miles, now is the time to evacuate. If you hear about a protest beginning in support of the alleged victim of the case, now is the time to evacuate. Head to a hotel at least 1 hour's drive away and stay away from any major cities and check in for a few nights. Pull your kids out of school, say they have the flu and you're keeping them home for the week. You can still go to work as normal, being especially vigilant for signs of riots forming, but take your armor and gun with you. You don't necessarily have to keep them on you throughout the day, but close by as much as possible. A backpack being carried into an office building might get a second look, but it beats having nothing at all. If your work has a gun-free zone building where actual security measures are in place, an utterly rare sight, try to arrange to work from home, or smuggle them in one day and leave them at your desk, workstation, or locker, and get a second set for your car. Upon the need to evacuate, even from work, grab them and go, keeping the gun out of sight until absolutely unavoidable. Keeping a first aid kit in your desk is not a bad practice, especially if it's one of those ready.gov approved red bag kits. It will hide everything, though the size needed to hold body armor might draw curious looks the first time, and thus having only the gun in the bag might be preferable. Now, F-bombs are armed, and they may be dropped. What's going to happen is this. First of all, Antifa is taking over the role that ISIS was filling. In fact, as far back as 2014, I was aware that there were terrorists in the United States and that another 9/11 was coming. Now, back then, I was not in a pay grade to concern myself overly much with this. Later on, I was. Well, later on, I was no longer in the service, and I had to consider it for myself. I took a look back on successful shootings and what they did right and wrong, and built from there. I also saw what ISIS was actually doing in Iraq, which was really not much more than a variation on a variation of what we did in Iraq in 2003, the Thunder Runs. They were going through villages, they'd shoot a few people, make sure everybody knew that they were here, and then they'd leave before the US Army could respond. It was a brilliant and highly successful tactic for a while. The two were meshing pretty close to perfectly. These uh, hit and run tactics being used by ISIS and the shoot and run tactics being used in 97 and 14, 13. The difference is that these people, the terrorist attacks in the United States, they'd go and they'd stay until the police showed up, such as Pulse nightclub, or they'd run and not show up to the next target. You gotta shoot and scoop quickly, right? You can't just disappear into the city for a couple of days and hope nobody notices. The longer they take to begin their second attack, the harder it will be to hide. That was the Inland Regional Center's mistake. And it really is a basic and simple tactic. The Christmas Day bombing that did change things a little bit. The use of a bomb is now proven to be a pretty utile tactic, at least in causing chaos. Nobody was killed in Nashville, not because of the announcements so much as the time of day. The reality is, nobody was out at that time. But it was also a very effective tactic for getting rid of a lot of the evidence. The fact that he made the bomb incorrectly in no way changes the outcome of the fear that he's caused. Hell, he's scared me. Now I see vehicles parked strangely and I'm kind of like I want to go a different direction. And that's the truth. Getting guns is just too easy. And I know you Aussies and Brits, you like to tell yourselves, we're so much better than you Americans. We've banned our guns. No, you haven't. You've just turned them into a black market. And there's case study after case study. In particular, I want to pick on you Aussies a little bit, or a lot this time. You say, well, we banned the guns in 97, and we haven't had a mass shooting since. No, you haven't had what you call a mass shooting. All right. You've had massacres, but nothing that would be called a mass shooting because there was this underlying criminal enterprise involved, usually drug related. That is what you have had, and you've had a good number of them. And all of them involved black market guns, including some specifically Tech 9s coming out of Brisbane, I think it was. I know it was Queensland, that were superior to US military standard issue weapons. They were above mil spec. If they're better than US Army rifles, they're better than Australian Army rifles too. That's the truth. Deal with it. Especially if you were leasing out British Army designs. And yes, I'm picking on the Brits there for their SA-80. This idea that we can ban guns and they will mysteriously go away, it's just not real. There is case study after case study. Even in countries where guns are banned and have been since the 1400s, I believe it was, that guns do show up. And I'm specifically talking about Japan. Now, in Japan, these crimes are usually behind closed doors. They're never solved because they're never even reported. And that's the truth, too. Oh, by the way, that doesn't in any way include international gun smuggling. There's two particularly nasty cases out of the U.S. One of them involved the attempt to smuggle a Chinese army tank into the U.S. Now, my understanding is this was a infantry support vehicle, armored infantry support vehicle, not a main battle tank. But that's very significant escalation by itself. But an even worse case out of Russia, and this was on 60 Minutes, so don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, of a gentleman who was being engaged to buy a submarine from Russia. Theodore Feinberg, he went by the street name Tarzan. He actually said in the interview that he thought this was ridiculous and that it could never be done, but he called his contact in Russia and was asked with or without missiles. Now, we don't know what with missiles would have resulted in because that was the time the FBI finally shut this thing down. But that's a pretty significant question to ask, isn't it? All right. Cue the autistic ring, especially from the Aussies. But no, it has not worked. Your plan has failed, Emperor Palpatine. The fact that ISIS's back has been broken in no way changes the fact that they're involved in this equation. They'll probably step into support and advisory roles, training roles. Um, Antifa will step into the frontline soldiers' roles, and some of them have gone to Syria. Well, some of them claim to have gone to Syria just to prove that they can. What I do know is the video of the guys that claim to have gone to Rojava, they did assemble what looked like an RPG-7, and they were assembling it correctly. I don't remember seeing the video and seeing them fire it, but that's a very, very significant capability. By the way, those are not available as airsofts. They might be available as dummy rounds or movie props. I got the feeling this was not a movie prop. What you can do to improve your odds. One is wear the body armor. It sucks, I know. I had to wear it in the brazen sun through 2007, excuse me, 2002, and from 2007 until 2009. And the 2007 to 2009 was with the heavy ceramic plates as well. Get at least class 2 and at least have a gun. It's that simple. Keep calm and mandatory carry on.